All right, let's dive into a book that's, well, it's not your typical business school read. It's more like a field manual written from the trenches. Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things isn't about how to build a company when everything's going great. Nope, it's about how to lead when everything is going horribly, catastrophically wrong. And let's just start right here, because this quote, this is the absolute soul of the book. You know, most business advice is all about the dream, the big vision, the perfect launch. Horowitz just says, look, that's the easy part. The real hard part, the part no one ever prepares you for, is the nightmare that hits when that dream slams into reality. And this slide right here really just frames the entire problem. Horowitz basically argues that most management books are trying to give you a recipe for things that have no recipe. There's no formula for market crash. There's no script for telling a loyal employee and friend that they're being demoted. And there's definitely no playbook for keeping your team's spirit alive when the company is teetering on the edge of failure. That's the hard thing about hard things. So you might be wondering, how did Horowitz even get the mental toughness to handle these impossible situations? Well, it didn't start in some fancy boardroom. It started way, way earlier, in what you could call his first war, just growing up. You know, he tells this story about a childhood incident where he was dared to pick a fight, but he chose to make a friend instead. And from that, he learned this critical lesson. Being scared doesn't make you a coward. Your actions are what define you. Later on, he was the only kid on the high school football team who was also in the advanced math classes. So he learned to see the world through these totally different lenses, to separate facts from how people perceive them, a skill that, trust me, would become a CEO superpower. And all of that early training was about to be put to the ultimate test at Netscape. Now, Netscape wasn't just another company. It was the absolute epicenter of the first internet boom. And it was locked in this brutal winner-take-all war with Microsoft, the most powerful tech company on the planet. And if you want to know what that pressure felt like, this email says it all. After Horowitz questioned his co-founder, Marc Andreessen, for leaking a huge strategy before a launch, this is the email he got back. And look, it's CC to the CEO and the chairman. This wasn't some peacetime office building a product. This was a wartime command center where tensions were at a boiling point every single day. So after Netscape, you'd think Horowitz and Andreessen would take a break, right? Nope. They decided to do it all over again. They co-founded a company called LoudCloud, a pretty revolutionary idea for a computing cloud, and they launched it in 1999, right at the absolute peak of the dot-com bubble. The timing, well, it could not have been worse. This quote from Marc Andreessen just perfectly captures what happened next. The first few months, pure euphoria. I mean, insane funding, massive growth. They were even on the cover of Wired magazine. And then, just as fast as it came, the terror struck. The market didn't just have a little correction, it completely evaporated. In the span of about 6 months, LoudCloud went from being the hottest startup in Silicon Valley to being basically radioactive, completely unfundable. All the private money just vanished, their customers started going bankrupt, and their only option left was this desperate last-ditch IPO. I mean, just look at this chart. This isn't a dip, it's a cliff. The NASDAQ lost 80% of its value. This was the financial apocalypse, where Horowitz had to somehow convince public investors to give him money for a company that was burning through cash and whose customers were disappearing every single day. Their backs were completely against the wall. In the middle of the IPO process, their own banker realized LoudCloud had just 3 weeks of cash left before they'd be bankrupt. The press was just brutal. One magazine called it the IPO from hell, and a Wall Street Journal article quoted a financier who said, wow, they were desperate. And yeah, they were. They actually managed to raise the money, but it wasn't a victory. It was more like a stay of execution. On their very first earnings call as a public company, they had to slash their revenue forecast for the year. They had a choice: lower the number just a little bit to soften the blow, or cut it a lot to make sure they didn't miss again. And their controller gave them this incredibly blunt advice. So they took all the pain at once and laid off 15% of their team. And just when you think things can't possibly get any worse, of course they do. The near-death experiences of the crash and the IPO, that was just a warm-up for the truly impossible choice that Horowitz was about to face. It was just a cascade of pure disaster. First, their biggest competitor went bankrupt, which shook everyone's confidence in the entire market. Then, their single largest customer went under, and poof, there goes $25 million in future revenue. The stock collapsed, the business model was officially broken, it was over. This is it. This is the moment that truly defines a leader. Most people would just start trying to manage the bankruptcy. But Horowitz asked himself a completely different question. He asked, what would I do after we go bankrupt? And just reframing it like that changed everything. The answer was to salvage the one truly valuable thing they had built, this complex piece of software, codenamed Opsware, that automated all their cloud services. He realized he could probably buy that software out of the bankruptcy and start a new company. And then he thought, wait a minute, is there a way to do that without doing bankrupt? And that's when the secret Oxide plan was born. Now, he couldn't tell anyone about this plan because it would have just destroyed morale and killed the existing business instantly. He had to become what he calls a wartime CEO, and this is a huge concept in the book. He had the complete, terrifying picture that nobody else did, which meant he was done listening to outside advice. The company would either live or die based on his decisions and his decisions alone. So what followed was this unbelievably complex escape act. He secretly negotiated the sale of the entire cloud business to a bigger company, EDS. The deal transferred all their customers, all their revenue, and 150 employees. It also meant he had to lay off another 140 people. And then, literally overnight, LoudCloud just ceased to exist, and it was replaced by a brand new software company with their one single asset, Opsware. So the deal gets signed, but the legendary coach and mentor Bill Campbell gave him this crucial piece of advice. He said, don't go to New York for the big press announcement. Stay home. Deal with the people. You need to tell every single person, immediately and honestly, whether they have a job at the new company, a job at EDS, or no job at all. Because if you don't, the people who stay will never, ever trust you again. So after this incredible, insane story of survival, what's the key takeaway here? What's the ultimate lesson from these brutal early years? Well, surviving didn't exactly mean winning. After the pivot, the stock of the new company, Opsware, fell to 35 cents a share. The market was basically saying the company was worth less than the cash it had in the bank. So they were alive, yes, but nobody believed in them. The struggle was just beginning, all over again. And that's what Horowitz's journey proves. It's the ultimate proof that leadership isn't about following some playbook. When the building is on fire, there are no rules. You have to face the struggle, you have to make the call nobody else can make, and you have to write your own damn playbook as you go. And that really is the core message of the book, captured perfectly right here. It's not about trying to avoid the hard things, it's about finding the courage to embrace the struggle. That's what we have for you today.